Hi. Tonight I put myself in a crash course by studying more about relationships and male-female relationships because that's what I happen to be oriented as. I'm sure it's a lot easier for although they do experience domestic violence, same sex or same born sex persons that are, not, I guess, augmenting themselves with, some of them take hormones and stuff. Because I think the hormones change your thinking too. But anyway, yeah, I got so involved and curious because when you Google or use this AI Google thing, it wants to give you these terms, and you're like, now wait a minute, what do you mean by that? And sometimes you have to ask a question twice because it wants to give you, for example, I was asking specifically about men in relationships. What do they mean when they say, I zoned out, or, different common terms. I got to a point with Google, what do men mean when they say blankety blank? What does that mean? And so I was having interpretations by AI about what they mean when they say certain, typical things. And so I was like because I'm really into communication, because I think that's well, first of all, my sun sign is Taurus, so I do have a lot of hedonistic tendencies, or desires, I should say. But I have a Gemini rising, so communication is absolutely huge to me. And I remember my first class in college, Communication 101. And I felt it was like life-altering, just this one first concept they threw at us, which is know your audience, right? And it couldn't be more true in male-female relationships, because the male brain in the last trimester of a woman's pregnancy, up until that point, males and females growing in the womb are pretty much the same except for their anatomy. It's not until the last trimester that the mother's body and exposure, the length of exposure to this, could explain a lot about gender differences in men. Men saying, there are some men that say, oh, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. My father was kind of that way, because he had to be delivered early to save his mother's life, and he had a really traumatic birthing process. Back then, it was 1933, I think, the doctors used to come to the house, and he came in breech, and it was very dangerous. He was huge. He weighed like almost 13 pounds, and my grandmother was pretty tiny. And it was terribly dangerous for both of them. Anyway, it's not that my father ever said to me that he felt like a woman in a man's body, but he had this upbringing where the majority, up until the age of about, I think it was 5, all of his friends were almost exclusively girls. And he seemed to have this, it's not necessarily a female characteristic, but he was highly verbal, which is unusual for males. Anyway, there's this hormone that's released in the last trimester, unless there's, it's still released, but the duration of exposure to the infant, if the pregnancy is terminated early, it's even if it's a birthing process, I don't mean terminated like abortion, but if the gestational period is interrupted, it affects the brain differently, so that these men grow up with varying degrees of feeling distanced from other men, like they're kind of different and they don't really know what it is, and in their youth it'll make them feel insecure, and some of them will become overly masculine to try to compensate outwardly so that people don't notice what they feel on the inside. And, that they feel, just kind of different. So, this is biological. But one of the positive things about this type of situation is, say, for example, you've got both parents have high IQs, which my father's parents did have. What will likely happen to a male baby that's not fully exposed to this male harnessing, I want to call it, because the woman's brain is a little more globally oriented. The male brain is more focused, and the reason for that was that somebody had to go out and do the dangerous hunting and engage with dangerous creatures in order to bring back that essential high-protein diet, especially when we started migrating into climates that were colder. Okay, and we couldn't grow crops as easily. So there was first that hunter-gatherer importance that helped humanity survive. And then the second thing that kicked in was the farming of domestic livestock. That came later. Anyway, I'm going into this whole thing because I want you to get a clue that this is very ancient biological brain differences between male brains and female brains. And here we are today in 2026, and the psychological and counseling community barely has a grip or a clue on how to resolve marital issues and conflicts and communication, which is why Dr. John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, made a huge frickin' amount of money from his books. They were wildly successful because there was this dearth in the psychological community for this kind of information. Into this day, while divorce rates are going up. I mean, it's just incredible. The average marriage now of, say, childbearing age people, the average marriage lasts only 4 years. Another biological reason for that. The reason why most people get divorced, most people with children, who have children right away, divorce after 4 years, is because the children are beyond that early threshold of dying when they're very young, under the age of 4 and 5. There's a very high probability that without the efforts of both parents, the offspring would die. So they managed to stay together long enough, both of them, to ensure the biological survival of the offspring. But then they just give it up. I've been thinking about that. It's not necessarily advantageous to consciousness and self-development to have short-term marital relations, multiple ones. But the reason is because there are so few experts that are communicating the really necessary information to these two types of brains that have a tendency to get together. So, anyway, that's probably enough for now. But there are definitely differences. And the more you study about, if you're the type of person that enjoys in-depth study and self-improvement, like I do, there's a lot to learn. A lot. about why things go wrong and stuff, and how to make sure that doesn't happen again.